Welcome or welcome back to Mia's Life with Books. Today's reading vlog, I thought we'd continue with the spooky season theme. I'm going to be reading thriller books for a week. I'm hoping that this video will go up when I intend it to go up, and that will be on the 29th. However, I am leaving to go home on the 24th. That means I'm gonna have to have read these books and edited this video for the 24th, since I won't be able to edit it when I go home. So either you'll be seeing this when I intend you to see it on the 29th, or you might actually be seeing it the week after Halloween. But it's okay because I feel like the season in general can extend a bit past Halloween. But we'll see how we get on anyway. I feel like I kind of do have a set TBR for this video just because there are a few thrillers that I do have on my radar. I'm not going to tell you them all yet. I will tell you the first one. And the first book that I will be reading in this video is The Intruder by Freida McFadden, which is her newest release. And I feel like Freida McFadden's books are always so easy to read. They're fast paced. They usually have shocking twists. And I always have a good time reading them, even if they're not always my favourite thrillers ever. This one I haven't actually had that many people talking about yet, although I'm sure plenty of people have read it. I just haven't seen anyone. I also have no idea what this one is about. I haven't read the blurb or anything. I don't intend to read the blurb. I'm guessing it's got something to do with an intruder in a house, but I'm definitely intrigued to go into this one blind and kind of let Freida tell me the story from the beginning. Hopefully Freida's brought out a good one. The last book she released, The Tenant, I gave 4 stars to, and the one before that, The Crash, I think I also originally gave 4 stars to, but I think it was more closer to a 3.5 thinking back on it. I did enjoy them both, so I know I am going to enjoy this one. It's just a case of how much I enjoy it. The most logical thing to do is start reading it. Currently 100 pages into The Intruder, so I thought I'd give a bit more of an update, especially considering I am sat down reading it now. So by the time I probably finish this little reading stint, I'll probably be a lot further in, so I thought now would be a good time to just pause reading just to update with my first initial thoughts. I'm not really sure how I feel about this at the moment. I am going along with it, like it's interesting, and as always it is fast paced and it is easy to read, but I feel like so far I'm just not really that hooked. Like I am getting through it quickly, but I don't think that's because I'm super invested. I think that is, like I said, just because it's easy to read and fast paced. But I think there's still a chance for Freida to pull that back, especially because I am only 100 pages in. I feel like she could completely make the last 200 pages a completely wild ride, and I feel like there is potential to have a few crazy twists. Not that I have any idea what those twists could be, but there are a few kind of questions that I have surrounding different things which I feel like could relate to what answers we may get, and twists could come from those answers, if that makes sense. So I haven't lost all hope. There could be a chance for me to enjoy it more than I am currently enjoying it. I am still enjoying it, like it's okay, it's not bad, and it's a Freida book, so you know, I feel like you can't really necessarily go wrong with a Freida book. So far it just isn't as good as what her other books have been, and I feel like usually at the 100 page mark of a Freida book I'm usually enjoying it a bit more than I am now. I should probably tell you a little bit about the plot. Essentially we follow Casey, who lives in a cabin in the woods, and there is going to be this huge storm happening, and just as the storm is starting up, she finds a girl covered in blood hiding out in her garden. Well, I don't know if it's quite a garden because she lives in the middle of nowhere in the woods, but like in the area surrounding her cabin, her little house in the woods, finds this girl. Naturally she invites the girl in because of the storm, and there's lots of mystery surrounding this girl, obviously because she is covered in blood for starters. She's very elusive, she's not really giving many details, she's not really speaking that much, so we don't really know what her story is or where she's come from. And we also have another perspective from a teenage girl, which has been titled as Before. So there's a possibility, I think Freida is leading us in the direction of believing that this girl that has arrived is the girl in the other perspective. However, I feel like it's not going to be that simple, and I think that is one of the places where a twist is going to come into it. But I am interested, I suppose, to find out who this girl is and why she's got blood all over her, etc, etc, and how it does relate to the other perspective, even if the girl from the perspective is not the same girl who Casey has invited in. I don't know whether I am just kind of misremembering, but I feel like the writing in this book feels even more simplistic than Freida's writing typically does. I don't know if that's just because with the last book that I read, which was With a Vengeance by Riley Sager, I felt like that writing was very sophisticated. I don't know whether that's just making this writing seem even more simplistic, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Like I don't think having simplistic language is a bad thing if you can back it up with the plots, with the characters. You can still have some very beautiful quotes, which I suppose isn't as relevant for a thriller, but you can still do very clever, beautiful things with your writing, even if you use simplistic language. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm feeling like with this one, to me, I've noticed more than any other time I've been reading a Frida book that it does feel very like rudimentary, simplistic language. And I just feel like that's not something that I've ever really cared about while reading Frida's books. Like, it's never been something that I've necessarily noticed or paid any attention to because it just didn't bother me. And I'm not saying it's bothering me now, but I just feel like I've noticed it more this time round. I'm not saying it's bad writing by any means. So I don't know what it is about the writing, but it's just something about it is making me pay more attention to it, and not necessarily in an entirely positive way, but then I'm not saying it's in a negative way either. But it's not like I'm noticing it like, oh, this is simple, but like it's being used really well, but I'm also not noticing it like, oh, this is simple and it's really bad, because it's not bad. I can't really explain why, but it's just something that is stuck out to me, is that it just seems a lot more simplistic than usual. Simplistic does not always equal bad. Sometimes simple but effective is the way to go. And like I said, she's still managing to make it easy to read and fast paced, keeping me semi-interested to going along with it. I'm still flying through it, so it's not all bad. That sounded very negative, all of that about the writing, but that was just more of a observation than a negative opinion, if that makes sense. I feel like I don't really have much else to say, so I think I'm just going to keep reading, and hopefully I will become a bit more invested in it and enjoy it a bit more, like I know I can enjoy Frida's books. Otherwise, if it keeps making me feel the way I feel now, it's not necessarily going to mean that it's a bad book. It's just going to be probably a bit more of an average read than I usually find Frida's books to be. Anyway, I'm just going to sit down, read some more, but I will see you in my next update. Just thought I'd give a very brief further update, as I don't actually have that much to say, but I am now on page 200. So I've read another 100 pages. There is more happening, like the plot is developing, and I'm slightly more intrigued as to where we're going with it all, just because I'm still not sure where this is going to end up for the last 100 pages. So I am intrigued, but I can't say I'm enjoying it that much more than I was before. Like, I still feel kind of meh about it all. Like, I feel like I'm still just only going along with it. So this is why it's a brief update, because I feel pretty much the same as I did before, except I have a bit more of insight on the whole writing style situation and why I felt like it was so simple. And I think it's because I've noticed that multiple times there seems to be a lot of repetition, and that seems to be like almost direct repetition of certain phrasings or sentences, and definitely of ideas, and I feel like it's just happening a bit more than usual. So I think because a lot of the time it is the same phrasing that's being used, it just makes it seem like a bit more simple, or at least that's one of the things that I can kind of pinpoint as to why I might be feeling like that. But I do also think there are moments that are quite witty, like the writing can be witty sometimes. I think it does make me laugh a few times, just the way things are phrased. They do have quite a humour to them, and sometimes it's a bit of a dark humour to it, so that's interesting. And also something I have noticed in Frida's books before, which does make it fun, adds a bit more of a dynamic to it. But other than that, I am feeling exactly the same. Still feel like, yes, the plot is developing and there are things happening, but it doesn't feel like there's that much happening. I thought we would have picked up the pace a bit more. Pace in terms of events, because the pace of the writing, obviously, quite clearly, is fast-paced, and I won't deny that, but the plot itself is kind of slow-moving just because it feels like there's not much happening. For the time being, I feel like my opinions are more or less the same, and I'm just finding this one a bit average, which is kind of disappointing, because I was hoping for a Frida McFadden banger. But you never know, the last 100 pages might absolutely blow me away, so stay tuned. I've just finished The Intruder by Frida McFadden, obviously, as that is the book I'm currently reading in this vlog, and unfortunately, I still feel the exact same. Overall, I still feel very average about this. I feel like it was kind of meh to me, which is really a shame, because as I have said multiple times, there have been so many Frida books that I have really enjoyed, and quite a few 5 stars. But yeah, this one just felt very average to me, and I'm not entirely sure why. I don't know whether I just didn't click with it as much as I usually click with her book. It wasn't that I didn't care, because I did, and I was interested, but it's just the interest was kind of limited, if that makes sense. As I've said the entire way through, it was fast-paced, it was easy to read, I was going along with it. I just wasn't fully invested to the point where I was desperate to keep reading. I was enjoying it. Like, I'm not saying I was sat there like, oh, this is so boring. Like, I wasn't necessarily bored. I just wasn't fully gripped or invested. I think I have ended up giving this one a 3 stars, which is not a bad rating. It is just an average rating. I will say that the last 100 pages, whilst they didn't necessarily pick up, and I still felt the same way about them as I had the previous 200 pages, that was obviously when we did start to get more of the twists, more of the answers. I will say there was one twist in particular which I did enjoy and didn't see coming until like it was kind of being revealed. Like when we started to get that reveal, I suddenly thought this is what's going on. It was still a surprise to me, and I did enjoy that twist because I thought it was kind of sweet more than anything. And there was also another big twist which I'm not gonna say I knew that was what was happening, but I feel like when I was trying to figure out the connections between certain aspects of the plot, I feel like one of the things that I had thought about was what the twist ended up being, but it wasn't something I was so convinced by that I was constantly thinking about. So it still kind of took me by surprise a little bit, but as I read it I kind of just went, yeah, that makes sense. Like I kind of expected it without actually actively expecting it, if that makes sense. So while there were some kind of big crazy twists, I feel like what was supposed to be kind of the main twist didn't really shock me as much as some of the other final twists. They were shocking in some aspects, but like I said, some of it was a bit predictable. Something I did like is when we were getting to know this girl, it was interesting to kind of see as the book progressed the kind of similarities between the characters and their kind of dynamic shifting and changing. I think the plot line we had with this girl coming into the cabin and kind of I think what Frida was trying to do, you know, make it really tense, you're on the edge of your seat, you know, thinking something's not quite right. That in itself wasn't very interesting to me because I just felt like the whole time I was like, well, that's clearly not actually what's going on here. I just feel like because I kind of didn't really believe in what she was trying to portray and I thought that wasn't going to be how the book continued, I just kind of thought, well, that's not actually going to happen, is it? But I think that kind of made me less interested as well because I was just kind of reading it like, yeah, whatever. Like, it's not actually that scary or anything because I don't believe that that's going to happen. Whether it happened or not, that's for you to find out when you read it. It wasn't all bad. I do think the last 100 pages probably were my favourite. Even then, it was still on the average side to me, unfortunately. I think this is actually the lowest rated Frida book I have given. You never know, the next book that she comes out, which I think is called Dear Debbie, that one, that could end up being a 5-star. Like, I don't know. I will never not read a Frida book because I don't regret getting this. I don't regret reading it. Frida is still one of my auto-buy authors and I do enjoy the majority of her work, but I'm definitely interested to see what some other people think of this one because I haven't seen that many people's thoughts and opinions, so I want to see if it's just a me thing or if other people feel the same way as me. 3 stars, not a bad book, not my favourite Frida book, but it was okay. I don't know what book I'm going to read next. Like I said, I did kind of have a kind of preset TBR for this video, but I can't decide which one of those books that I want to start right now, and I'm not going to have time to start it right this minute anyway. So what will probably happen is when I do find time to read later on in the day, I will let you know what book I have chosen. Then I guess I will see you when I start my next book. I have finally decided what book I'm going to be reading next, and I have gone with one of the two that was kind of on my mental TBR for this video. I was thinking there was a point where I was gonna have to choose something else just because I wasn't sure if I was feeling either of the ones that I'd chosen. In the end, I did go with one of them, and that is Strange Sally Diamond by Liz Nugent. I've actually heard so many good things about this, and I'm actually in the middle of doing a category report for one of my publishing assessments at uni. The category I'm doing is crime and thriller fiction. So when I was doing some research, I stumbled across like a bestsellers post, and apparently this was the #1 best-selling book in Ireland. In Ireland? I can't say that without saying it in an Irish accent. It was the Irish #1 bestseller apparently in like 2024, I think that was when I was looking at it. But I am excited to read this. Like I said, I have heard quite a few things about it, and most of them, in fact I think everything I have heard has been good. I actually do know a bit about the plot of this one, which is unusual I feel like for some books, although I still don't know that much of the plot. One of my bookish friends and also one of my favourite creators, What Michaela reads, this is one of her favourite books and she always raves about it, and she raves about Liz Nugent in general. She was really the one that kind of inspired me to want to read this in the first place, and because she's spoken about it so much, I do kind of have a vague kind of idea of the plot, although to be honest the only bit that I can solidly remember is that I'm pretty sure Sally's father tells her that when he dies she can just put him out with the bins. Obviously he's joking, Sally takes him literally, so I think the book starts off with Sally being in a bit of a sticky situation because she literally did take her father's body into the bins. I think that's where we start, but to be honest I don't know where it goes after that. So I have also heard this is more of a character study book, but that's not always a bad thing. I have reasonably high expectations for this. I wouldn't quite say it was gonna be a 5-star prediction, but I do think I am gonna enjoy it, and I think it's gonna be a good book. I think I'm just gonna start it. dressing gown. I was feeling a bit chilly and I wanted to get all cozy, so dressing gown it is. Secondly, I have made some good progress with Strange Sally Diamond. I am now 140-ish pages in, and this is actually so good. I was right with the kind of basis knowledge that I had. Sally's dad did tell her to put him out with the bins. She did take that literally. It did cause her a bit of issue with the police, but there's more to the plot. I now know where we go after that. Essentially, after her father's death and her attempt of disposing his body, lots of things about Sally's past come to light. She already knew she was adopted, but there's a lot of things that she didn't know surrounding her adoption and the kind of disturbing circumstances that she was adopted from. Quite devastating circumstances that she had prior to this adoption, and a lot of these things are just coming to light, so we're getting a deep dive into kind of what happened, which is really interesting, and it's darker than I expected. I didn't know that was where we were going with this book. Like I said, all I'd retained of people talking about the plot was the whole putting her dad out in the bins. I think that was a great way to set up this book and to really showcase what Sally is like as a character. She's not being officially diagnosed, but it's mentioned that she is on the spectrum, and I think that is very clear in the way her character comes across and how it is written. I don't think it is written in an insensitive way. Being in Sally's head is a very unique experience, and I think really helps to characterize Sally's character, really getting to see how her brain works and her inner thoughts and the different things she's going through, experiencing these different things and how she would experience them and view them compared to how I would experience or view certain situations and how I would deal with them. Seeing that kind of difference very much does help to build her character. I really enjoy Sally as a character. I think there's multiple different layers to her that you might not necessarily see on the surface, and I think it's interesting the more we're kind of getting to know her as a character and getting to know more about her past, which even she didn't know, and ways in which her past may have influenced how she is in the present, because obviously she had a very traumatic first few years of her childhood, which could have possibly affected certain characteristics and behaviours that she has in the present. Learning about her childhood is very upsetting as it is very dark. It doesn't go into detail on the blurb about what happened in her childhood, so I'm not going to mention anything, but very dark, very disturbing. And we do also get some perspectives from that time in this book. Again, I won't say anything about who or what they kind of focus on, but they are past perspectives which are very interesting for various reasons and also add to kind of the devastating kind of nature surrounding that time. I think it can be difficult to read. It definitely draws out lots of different emotions, and I wasn't necessarily expecting to get those perspectives as they're not appearing from the very beginning. And at first I was kind of reading this, like the first 50 pages, I was like, you know, this is kind of just giving regular like literary fiction. Like that was what it was feeling like until we did start to get more into that past, and then I was like, okay, now I'm seeing where the kind of more darker thriller elements are coming into this one, and like the crime fiction element of it. As morbid as it sounds, I'm really enjoying it, and I'm excited to get more into the past and also how there is a link between the past and the present in terms of what is happening in the direction of the plot. So I am very excited to keep reading, and it has really hooked me and intrigued me, and I understand why it's so popular and why so many people have so many good things to say about it. All positive thoughts so far. I'm enjoying it. I think it's a good book. I low-key just spent over 2 hours at uni finishing this book. It was my day where I had my 3-hour break in between my lecture and my seminar, and when I don't have too much work to do, I will use the bulk of that to read. So that's what I did today, because I was really invested and I was just so interested by all the reveals and just the history we were getting and all the different kind of events and character development, problems that were arising. Literally everything that was happening in this book I was interested by, so it was so easy for me to just sit down and completely finish literally nearly 200 pages of this book in one go, because from the beginning I was just interested in what was happening, even when I originally thought it was giving me just lit fic vibes and it hadn't quite got to the thriller feeling yet. I was still interested by what was going on because the writing style is engaging. It does seem very sophisticated and it does a great job of representing what is going on in Sally's brain, and I feel like that was so captivating and engaging to kind of see, like I was saying before, how she deals with situations. And I also just think it made for a very witty, humorous time. There were were certain situations in which Sally would react in certain ways that I do think were written to be quite witty, and they did make me laugh. But again, I don't think it was done in a demeaning way. I don't think it was like in a making a fool out of Sally. So I do think that was done very well. This book also did have a lot of dark and quite sad moments. I think a lot of things that happened to a lot of the characters, more so in the past timeline more than anything, was very harrowing, and also the kind of knock-on effects it had on other characters that maybe weren't directly a victim of the situation, but due to the situation ended up being affected in their own ways and impacted in their own ways in a negative sense. But I think the way it was kind of interwoven with the present timeline and Sally's character, I think that did almost add a bit of a difference in emotion, as we were following Sally's personal journey, which could also have ups and downs, especially because the things that were happening were still kind of a result of the traumatic childhood that she had before she was adopted. So whilst it still does have those kind of negative, darker connotations, I think as it was more of a reflective journey of her personal development and her personal journey, that almost made some of it a bit more wholesome and heartwarming, seeing that development come to light as opposed to constantly focusing on the bad and the negative. We did get a lot of that positivity, a lot of that character development, which was really nice to see. I do think the way that everything kind of played out in terms of finding out what had happened in the past and getting that full past timeline situation was very shocking, and I didn't expect certain things to happen. So it was definitely kind of unexpected unraveling that whole situation, and also coming across different elements that were then revealed in the present timeline kind of simultaneously. Sometimes the storylines were working together to kind of make these reveals and give the reader that kind of shock factor when you finally realise some of the things that have happened and how some of these things are connected. So I think that was done very well, and it was very engaging in that sense. But all those plot twists and things had a lot of a deeper meaning and impact on the story than just, I suppose, your average shocking plot twist, if that makes sense. Like, while this book is obviously marketed as like a thriller, mystery thriller, and it does have those elements, it does feel a lot deeper and that there's more going on under the surface. Like, I wouldn't say it's like a popcorn thriller by any means like the previous book I read by Freedom McFadden. It's a lot heavier, there's a lot more going on with it. But I do think my favourite part of this book was Sally as a character. I think she is such a great character, and like I said, seeing all of this development, I think that was probably one of my favourite parts, seeing that journey, which I suppose would lend itself more to the kind of the character study side of the book and less the thriller side. I still really enjoyed the mystery thriller aspect. I thought that was done really well, but I do think Sally as a character was one of my favourite parts of this book. Like, there were just so many funny moments where she would just be unintentionally funny, where she would just come out with the most random things in certain conversations and not realise that what she said is just completely random for that context. Like, sometimes she says a lot of very personal thoughts to essentially a stranger without thinking like, oh, maybe I shouldn't share this personal thing. Like, she just, it's almost like she has completely no filter, and in certain situations that did come across as very humorous just because of the matter-of-fact way that she would say certain things to certain people, and not realise until after the fact why that may be unusual to say certain things like that. It did honestly make me laugh. Like, she did crack me up sometimes because of just how random she was at certain points. But there was definitely a lot to her character. I think there were different facets of emotions and things that she had going on, all stemming from obviously her childhood and the way that she was even brought up when she was adopted, and certain things that she was used to in her life that kind of led her to being, I suppose, in this set lifestyle. And then when that all started to change, it kind of affected her and impacted her in different ways. I do think they did a very good job of developing her character and seeing a lot of growth. However, I will say, as much as I loved everything else about this book, I did not enjoy the ending very much, and I have actually, since finishing this, I did do a bit of Goodreads browsing, and I can see a few people agree with the ending. It seemed very abrupt, and it was abrupt to the point where it was almost like certain character developments and situations were kind of made, not redundant, it's hard to say without spoiling anything, but certain situations were kind of resolved, but not in a fully resolved way, if that makes sense. Like, they are fully wrapped up. It feels like the way they were wrapped up was quite quick and maybe there could have been a bit more done with that, or maybe it could have ended in a different way. And then other situations and how they ended, they were just done so abruptly, and it felt like it kind of undid a lot of the work that had gone into certain characters, and how all of that work had just kind of been for nothing in the end. And it felt like it was all a bit, again, not pointless, but like it did just feel a bit disappointing that we had worked to a certain point and then it just all kind of crumbled and got taken away without then an extra resolution. Because I think if what happened was to happen and then we got a bit of extra time to kind of rebuild the crumbling of what we'd worked for, I think I would have appreciated that a bit more, as opposed to just leaving it kind of as a mess, kind of back where we started. And it's such a shame because I was really loving this, and I still loved it. I think it's a great book, but I have, because of the ending, given it 4 stars, whereas it probably would have made it to a 4.5. It's just the ending really disappointed me, and I really wish it didn't end that way. So that's the only really negative thing I would say about it. Other than that, like I said, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. I feel like I've been waffling for a long time about that book, but the last read we are going to be reading this week in this video is The Butcher by Jennifer Hillier. I think this is kind of more of a horror, I want to say. I think we can count it in this reading thriller books for a week video. It's giving thriller horror vibes, so we're going with it. I have heard so many people raving about this author and this book. So many people have given this book 5 stars, so it seems like it's going to be a really nice book to end this video on, and maybe it might be a 5-star for me too. I kind of actually don't know that much about it. I am excited to read this. I think it's the perfect season to read this. So that's the next book I'm going to read, and it is on my Kindle. But I will see you in the next clip when I have started reading it. I am 91 pages into The Butcher, so I thought that's enough to kind of give you my initial thought. Don't know what the lighting did there, let's ignore that. And I feel like that's enough pages to give my initial thoughts, because I feel like so much has happened already, and I think that's helped by the fact that we have multiple different perspectives that all have different connections to the central plot of the book, and it's all very interesting, and I will get more onto that. But first I'm going to talk about the plot. Essentially, we are following this serial unaliver case. This serial unaliver, the Butcher, was caught and he was gunned down, so everyone thought he was dead. The murders seemed to stop, and one of our perspectives is the chief of police at the time, who was in charge of this case and who was seen as kind of a hero for catching the Butcher. We also follow his grandson, who he has just given his old house to. So his grandson Matt has moved in, and Matt finds a very interesting crate buried in his backyard, which holds a lot of secrets that he is shocked to find out. And then we also follow the perspective of Matt's girlfriend Sam, and she believes her mother was a victim of the Butcher. However, her mother was killed after the Butcher had supposedly been killed. So we've got 3 different things. So we've got 3 different perspectives going on here, and they all obviously link for very obvious reasons, but also some less obvious reasons as well. So that is why we've got so much going on, and I feel like so much has happened, because we have seen kind of the starting events of 3 different strands of this storyline, which all come together to create this big bundle of events, if that makes sense. I will also say I'm very much enjoying it. I think it's very intriguing, and even though certain things are kind of revealed to you very early on, because we have 3 such different perspectives on this situation to do with the Butcher, it's interesting to see what's happening in their separate kind of storylines, because obviously some characters know things that other characters don't, and it's almost like you wish they would just talk to each other and tell each other what they know to get that big picture. But I think obviously that is part of what is so interesting, is the fact that they don't know what these characters know. It's so hard to explain how I think without giving away a major point of the book, which, like I said, it does get revealed to you very early on, but it's not in the blurb, and I was shocked by it when I first started reading it. So I'm not going to say anything, but because I can't say anything, it's hard to explain why it's so interesting, even though you already know that, if that makes sense. But just take my word for it, it's very interesting, I'm very intrigued, and I'm curious to see how or when these characters are gonna, finally realise what each other knows, and where we are gonna head with this storyline, because it feels like, as we kind of know the answers to the central mystery, it's hard to tell where the direction of the book is going to go and what we're kind of aiming for, since we as a reader have lots of different pieces of information that the other characters don't. So we can kind of piece together a lot more than the other characters. So I suppose you could say it's going to go along the rows of just the characters finding out everything as they go through, but I feel like there's going to be something more than that going on. Otherwise it would almost feel a bit redundant for the reader. I definitely think there's going to be something interesting going going on definitely captivated my attention. And like I said, it's already shocked me. I am invested and I am wanting to know where we are going to go from here already. And I do just really like the way that the 3 different perspectives are kind of interwoven and how they are so different and take completely different journeys, even though they're all centered around the same situation. But yeah, so we definitely have a different range of characters, different things going on to add different layers to what you could suggest to be a very simple idea. But obviously this idea is not actually as simple as you would first expect it to be. It's very convoluted and complicated, but in a sophisticated, well done way. But I think that is a decent update, and that's all I kind of really have to say. But I am excited to read more and excited to give you another update once I am maybe a bit further into it. Sorry guys, I am in my dressing gown once again. I'm pretty much living in it permanently at the moment because it's just so cozy. But I am here to say that I have now finished The Butcher and I loved it. It was so good. It was so disturbing and unsettling, and at times I really wanted to stop reading just because it was either making me really angry, really grossed out. Like I said, it was just disturbing, and yet it's one of those books where you just can't stop reading it anyway. Even when you want to look away, you can't, because it honestly just has such a gripping writing style and plot that it just keeps you hooked the entire way through anyway. The pacing of it was really good as well, and I think we have a very interesting dynamic from the beginning, obviously having the big reveal and kind of knowing the full mystery at the beginning, and instead of following a plot where we're trying to uncover the mystery, uncover the serial killer, uncover who the butcher is, we know all of these details, and yet we're following how that's affecting different characters and also following other characters trying to solve the mystery themselves, which, like I said, is a very interesting dynamic, as we obviously as readers know everything and we're seeing all of these perspectives. We are filling in the gaps that the characters don't know and don't have. So I think it's very interesting. I think there's a risk with knowing the mystery from the start of it being less engaging, less addictive, less of a page turner. But I think with this one, that wasn't an issue at all. And I think it still kept you very much wanting to know what was going to happen next, even though we did know the main mystery. And that wasn't to say there weren't other twists and plot reveals, because there were many reveals along the way that genuinely had me shook. There was one towards the end where I literally gasped out loud. At first, I didn't really click what had kind of been revealed until it was more like explicitly said, but just before we got to the kind of explicit reveal of it just clicked in my head what I had just read, if that made sense. Like, it was a bit of a delayed reaction, but when I finally clicked, my jaw dropped and I gasped out loud because it was that crazy. I just didn't even think about it like ever being a possibility. So there were still multiple twists that did get you shocked, which I think also helped keep the engagement going, and it was still interesting to see these different characters trying to solve their own mysteries and also trying to deal with information that they found out, and the other perspective we have surrounding the butcher as well, although that was obviously the more unsettling one. But I won't go into too much detail because it is still a spoiler. Even if we get a lot of the information at the beginning of the book, I would still say it's very much a spoiler for the overall premise. But I think the characterization was on point because, like I said, I did feel very disturbed and unsettled and grossed out, but I think the characterization was very complex of every character, and there were different facets of their characterization for each character, which I think was done very well, which again helped keep these different perspectives interesting and dynamic and work all together really well. I still wish some characters had just spoken to each other a bit more, because then more things would have been revealed. But obviously it was done that way intentionally to keep the plot moving and not just, finish the plot quicker. Like, I know that was done intentionally, but it still doesn't mean I wasn't out there screaming at certain characters to talk and tell each other certain things, or even for certain characters just to do certain things that they weren't doing. Also, I can't remember whether I mentioned this in the previous clip when I gave you my first updates, but I remember I said when I was first talking about this book that I thought it was a horror, but it's not. It is literally just a normal thriller. Parts of it are a bit gruesome, but it's not necessarily always explicitly graphic, but there is a lot of gruesome discussion of certain topics to do with the butcher, and also there are some more explicit scenes with certain things, so I would definitely also check trigger warnings because of that. But it's definitely not a horror, so I don't know where I got that impression from. Yeah, I wouldn't say it was a horror. It was giving thriller the whole way, which is obviously fine. That makes it even better for this video since it was thriller books, not horror books. It's giving Criminal Minds, but just from a slightly different perspective, which as a Criminal Minds girly I absolutely love. So while some parts I wasn't particularly enjoying reading in the sense of this is really gross and I think I don't want to be reading those words or those thoughts. Obviously all of that is intentional, it is supposed to make you feel that way about characters and situations, so obviously that's not a negative thing. Overall, I just think it was a really good thriller. I think it's a great book, and I did give it 4.5 stars, so not quite a 5-star, but obviously 4.5 stars is amazing. It just didn't quite give me the 5-star feeling. I did very much enjoy it. I loved it. I think it is a very, very good thriller, and it is one that I think I will continue to recommend. So I would definitely recommend it. And yeah, to be honest, I don't really have many negative things to say about it. Like, I can't really think about anything that I didn't like. I just think overall it was a very good read. So 4.5 stars for this one. Really enjoyed it. Would really recommend. Definitely check trigger warnings. But I think if you like true crime, Criminal Minds, all of that kind of thing, definitely pick this one up. Overall, it's been a good vlog and I hope you have enjoyed watching it. If you have enjoyed, please do leave a like and comment if you've read any of these books. It would also mean the world to me if you could subscribe if you want to see more vlogs like this, and hopefully I will see you in the next video.